I'm amazing.
All right, this guy's amazing. I guess we're good. Go ahead, Caleb.
Cool. Well, we can definitely keep this informal and loose. It can be more of a question and answer. Whatever burning topics you all want to learn about. But I could start off by talking about the how the crop is looking so far, because it's been definitely like a very non-typical year growing season so far. It was like wet and cold for the spring early on. So everything started out kind of like 2 weeks behind, but then we had a really good stretch of hot weather, maybe a little bit too early, and now some varieties are actually looking like 2 weeks ahead. So farmers really don't know what to expect. Maybe it'll stay 2 weeks ahead, maybe it'll be closer to like 1 week ahead, but very different as far as the growing season goes this year. So no early predictions on like quality variance yet, but yield might be average, under average a little bit, but still a little bit too early to tell. So we'll see how the last half of July and early August shapes up. But no smoke in this corner of the U.S. so far. So
That's good.
yeah, all the.
Plenty here.
Oh, really? Bummer.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah. Normally that's our summer, especially like 2020 and 2021. We were just super smoked out, but we've been good so far. So fingers crossed that kind of holds. Yeah.
And I have a question, how is the unseasonable rain this year, or how does it traditionally affect the hop crop? Because aren't you guys like wine? You need to be nice and dry throughout the growing season.
Yes and no. So hops require a ton of water, to grow. They're a very water intensive crop. But that being said, they don't like humidity. So that's why they thrive in the Yakima Valley in particular. We're super high desert. So we're in the rain shadow of the Cascades. So all the rain gets dumped on Seattle, and we have very little actual precipitation here. The tourism board says we get 300 days of sun every year. I don't know if that's true or not, but it sounds pretty cool. So a lot of sun, not a lot of rain. We do hit triple digits pretty regularly or consistently during the summer. But yeah, they don't like the humidity because it actually promotes like molds and mildews growing on the leaves, on the foliage. So that's no good. And historically, that's been actually what's pushed hops westward. Because when the colonists first landed on Plymouth Rock, they were growing hops on the East Coast, and then downy mildew wiped it out there. So then they started growing in Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, around the Great Lakes there. But then that's too humid as well. So then it just kept pushing west, and it was actually Thomas Edison that kind of started the irrigation project in the Yakima Valley, and now that's where a lot of the hops come from. So it's pretty cool to kind of have that historical perspective. But yeah, a ton of rain this spring. It stayed like the ground was frozen for 2 weeks longer than usual. So the hops have been up and down and all around, but we'll see how they shake out. So. Yeah. And
so
question?
If you get rain like this time of year, is there like mitigation techniques that you have to prevent the mildew or any kind of negative impacts on the hop flowers? I know that it's a very intensive crop from water consumption, but you don't want that moisture. Do you have any mitigation techniques for the crops?
Each farmer has their own, techniques to deal with it, whether it's sulfur or, any of the, pesticides, mildewicid's, or whatever you call those. So there's different ways to fight different pests or mildews or disease pressures. We've gotten a little bit of rain, but we haven't gotten a ton so far. So right now we're still nice and dry, and all the hops are really happy. So there was. Last year, maybe 2 years ago, there was actually some down fields at one of the farms because it rained a ton. It was right during harvest, so the hops were huge and all bushed out and really, really heavy. But then there was a lot of rain and wind, and it actually knocked hop fields over. So that was, not good to see, because then the hops go to waste and, the fruit just rots, which nobody wants. But yeah, so I would say, extreme circumstances, then heavy rain can definitely affect them. But as far as molds and mildews, mostly I would say those are under control. It's all variety dependent too, so something like cashmere is a lot more susceptible to certain molds and mildews, but then there's other ones that are resistant and don't need to be sprayed or treated at all. So it's definitely interesting how the different varieties deal with different pressures like that. So, and actually kind of, talking about that, one of the things that I did want to talk about were a couple new varieties that are getting released or have been released. And the first one is Mackenzie, and that one, kind of sparked my memory there, because it was specifically bred and grown to be grown in Oregon. So, they have different daylight hours, different disease pressures, a lot more humid down there. They don't get as much sun, they have a lot more rain. So Mackenzie was bred and selected specifically for that Oregon growing climate. And not only does it grow really well agronomically there, it kind of maximizes the terroir of the area. But I personally am really attracted to that one because, like, my all-time favorite hop is Chinook. I just use it whenever I can. I love beers that have Chinook. I think it's great and just, way overlooked. But Mackenzie kind of has some of that like classic Chinook or even like old school Centennial character, where it's, really citrusy and fruit forward, but then there's enough pine resin and, stuff in the background to make it really interesting. So as far as like West Coast IPAs go, Mackenzie's killer, or even cold IPAs that try and leverage some of, the more classic styles. Even though Mackenzie's, brand new, I think it has more of that like classic character. So that's one that I'm personally attracted to. And then there's a couple other new experimentals, and so far they just have numbers. There's HBC 1019, and HBC stands for Hop Breeding Company. So that's the joint venture between John I. Haas and Yakima Chief Hops here in town, or Yakima Chief Ranches, I guess. But so even though they're competitive companies, they collaborate together on breeding and releasing varieties, just trying to be, sustainable and consistent in the marketplace. But so HBC 1019, that's one of the new ones, and we had a bunch of beers with it at CBC this year, the Craft Brewers Convention, and it's easily, like, I've been in hops for not quite a decade, but long enough to see a lot of the new releases and new varieties and stuff like that. But 1019, when I tried it, admittedly I was kind of like maybe a little jaded or salty. I was like, we don't need another new variety. Like, nothing you can present to me is going to wow me. But 1019 actually did. So I was converted, and it's an amazing hop. It's just huge and potent. Tons of fruit flavor to it, mostly like the sweet, fleshy, tropical fruit stuff going on. But the really interesting part about it is that it just has so many layers of flavor to it. So some brewers that sponsored Acreage initially there was one brewery here in the state, Reuben's Brews, and then Odell Brewing Company in Colorado. They were the first two to sponsor Acreage for that experimental, and they've been playing around with it for a while. And they brewed a bunch of different stuff with it, but some of their brewers noted like some really like caramelized sugar characters to it. Like they said like caramelized plantains, or even like dark rum, just like that really like dark, rich sweetness to it. And I've never come across anything else like it in a hop variety before. And I didn't really pick up on it when I was first rubbing it, smelling it, trying some of the beers. Mostly I just got like, the big fruit to it, but it does just have like a really well-rounded character and offers a lot. So 1019, super exciting. On the complete opposite other end of the spectrum is HBC 1134. And that one is awesome because everything in my fridge right now are Pilsners and lagers. And this is it's a new American noble style hop. So really targeting like the same floral character that Hallertau Middle Brew has. A little bit of spice, kind of reminiscent of Saz. Little earth and oak wood character like East Kent Golding, but it's kind of just like really it captures a lot of that old school noble European hop variety flavor, but it's in a American grown hop that is awesome, and it grows great. It's beautiful. It is more like water or drought resistant, so it as well was bred for the changing climate, different pressures and things like that. So agronomically, it's killer. It grows like 15 bales an acre, which is like amazing. So it produces really well. It stores really well. Its bittering potential is like super clean and consistent too, which is really nice. So definitely like lager pilsner, just superstar. So those are the three varieties that I'm personally excited about. So just wanted to talk about those a little bit. If you guys,
can I ask a question about that last hop? What's like a kind of alpha beta acid balance on that one?
The alphas are a little bit higher compared to most nobles. From what I remember, it was like 10 to 12-ish. And then the betas, they were lower. So all that being said, I was recently introduced to this concept of harmonious bitterness, and this comes from the German brewers. This is something that they've been observing or talking about forever, and they look for a target of pretty much like a 1-to-1 alpha to beta ratio, and they believe or know that varieties that offer that, which Hallertau Middle Brew is probably the most prominent example. If they have that 1-to-1 alpha to beta ratio, then they say that it has a harmonious bittering potential, and that's what they really look for. So it's interesting that you asked about the beta ratio to it, because admittedly 1134 falls out of that category, but it's still an amazing noble variety. So I don't know if the Germans are going to love it, but I know the couple lagers and pilsners that I've had, they've just been like perfect. Like, yeah.
So for those varieties, those will be available to the public, or are they still experimental?
So you're going to see them as their experimental name for a while. So HBC 1019, that one I believe is entering its fourth year, either fourth or fifth year, in the trial experimental release timeline. So earliest, I'll back up and say I think 1019 is going to be a special exception and get released a little bit earlier than most others, just because it has performed so well in so many different ways. But traditionally it wouldn't get a name until maybe like year 7 on the early side, or year 8. There's some varieties coming out through the USDA hop breeding program that Vista was the last one they released, and that one was 12 years in the works. So a lot of these varieties do just take a ton of time, and it takes years of just growing it, brewing with it, testing it, trialing it, replanting it, growing it out a little bit more. I guess that just means that when a hop does get a name, it means that it's passed so many different, check marks or just quality checks over the years. So it's going to be good. Yeah.
Never knew that. That's interesting. Thank you.
So in that same vein, there's been a lot of like thiolized yeast and that whole market do you see the hop industry adjusting to that at all and trying to find a thiolized strain, knowing that it's such a long runway between HBC and actually releasing a hop? Do you see anything on the hop side of the industry that's trying to maybe not compete with, but kind of coincide with the yeast, complement the yeast changes?
Yeah, so I guess like two parts to that. So when all of this renewed interest and research went into thiols, bound thiols, free thiols, things like that, it kind of like shone a light on why Citra is just so good, because it does have 4-MMP and 3-AMH and ABCDQFG. Like it has all of the bound thiols and free thiols. It has tons of biotransformation precursors. So I think it kind of, explained in a very articulate way, like why Citra is just so good and why you use it in everything, because it can do everything and it offers you a little bit of everything. So the second part to that answer is that, because it takes 10 years, basically give or take a couple of breeding and experimentation and planting and all of that, usually breeding programs don't chase trends. So 1134, it was already in the gene pool. They already had that rhizome growing out for years. Just because lagers and pilsners and craft, lighter beers are getting popular now, doesn't mean that, last year they were like, ooh, we need a pilsner hop. It was more like, oh, there's a pilsner hop. What do we have in our rhizome bank or gene pool that really works well for this? So it's kind of just like a numbers game. Every year HBC releases or comes out with trials of like 2,000 to 3,000 different varieties. So, that's 2,000 potential varieties every single year. It doesn't take long before you have, just like this massive bank of rhizomes and gene material. So, yeah, does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, I guess a follow-up to your first comment. So because this has helped to show how awesome Citra is the industry adjusting to plant more Citra to have a bigger bank of Citra in a couple of years?
Well, so Citra's interesting. It is the #1 hop by acreage. It's the most popular hop. It's in absolutely everything. But agronomically, it's pretty bad. Not disease-wise, quality-wise, it's amazing, but it doesn't yield very well. It's something like 8 to 9 bales per acre, so almost half of what HBC 1134 is. And then there's like the German alpha varieties, some of them are way up there too, 16 to 18 bales. So Citra is like really low on the yield. So even a hop breeding company who owns Citra, they're trying to find a Citra replacement that yields as well as most, let's say modern. Even though Citra is, less than 10 years old, it's still, if Citra was released today, it would not meet all the standards for agronomics. So even though it's an amazing hop flavor, aroma, brewing value wise, it probably wouldn't get released today. It got released early, when there was a little bit less competition, let's say. So
it's like the IPA of hops.
What was that?
It's like the IPA of hops.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It sells so many, you have to brew it, but it doesn't mean it's like the best beer in the lineup, right?
Yeah. No, I love Citra. I mean, it's the best for a reason, but if they could get a little bit better yielding Citra, that would be better for everybody. So, yeah.
Is HBC US only, or is it international?
It's U.S. only, so it's based in Yakima here. There's also there are international breeding programs. So there's HPA, Hop Products Australia. They're out of Australia. There's Hops Comptoir out of France. There used to be an English breeding program, but I don't know what happened to that. That disappeared. There's a Polish breeding program. There's smaller ones all over, but HBC is definitely the biggest, not only in the U.S. but globally. U.S. produces more hops, so the USDA is also another major breeding program in the U.S. There's the Hop Research Council, the HRC. They release a lot of the public varieties, and they're getting a little bit more funding. They're getting a little bit more support and traction. There's it was a couple years ago, the Brewers Association gave them some grant money over the next couple of years to improve the public breeding program. I think they hired another, maybe not even full-time, but I think they bought some more hours from a breeding professor in Prosser, Washington here. So that's where all the public breeding stuff is done. Oregon State also has a good breeding program too. So, yeah.
Are those when it's a USDA brand? Do they license the patent to that particular hop, or how does that work? I'm interested in like the business side of it.
Yeah, so if it's USDA, it's publicly owned by everybody, which is awesome. So technically, like, I own a little bit of Vista, you own a little bit of Vista. If you want to go and grow Vista at your house, you absolutely can. You can propagate it, you can farm it, you can do whatever you want with it. Same thing goes for Cascade, Centennial. All of those came out of the public breeding program. So yeah, public hops are amazing for the industry. Anything that you see with like a trademark or a little registered symbol, those are like registered brands. So they would be owned by somebody, some breeding program or some farm or somebody. Yeah.
So like for homebrewers, when we want to grow our own hops and torture ourselves, we can only get a hold of those certain types. That explains why when you go to order hop rhizomes online, you can't get a Citra, you can't get some of these others because those are
Galaxy
trademarked specifically. We can get Cascade and Centennial and all kinds of boring hops, but we can't get any of the
Nugget hops.
Whoa! You said boring hops? No. No, I'm joking. But yes, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
There's a reason why you guys grow them, because we try to grow them at home and they always suck. So.
Oh yeah, I imagine you guys are a little bit more humid than we are.
Yeah, we have a lot more mid-season rain, and it's crazy. So put it this way, we get just as much annual rainfall here in Virginia as Seattle does. It comes down in deluges, like these big massive storms spread out throughout the year instead of like Seattle just drizzles all year, right?
Yeah.
About 40 inches annual rainfall.
Oh wow, I didn't know that. That's funny. You could try Mount Hood. That's another like Oregon climate variety. In general, that one feels pretty well with rain and humidity. So.
Okay, thanks.
More fun to grow. It's fun to grow, but you yield better results if you buy them off of Yakima.
You know what you're getting. Repeatable results.
That's true. That's true.
Predictable. Yeah.
Enough amateur questions. Just have your hop.
Yeah, for sure.
Just have your hop bomb.
I've got more questions if you guys
Go ahead.
take all
Go
the
ahead.
time, so.
Go ahead.
Put your face in the so he can see you.
So, are you guys when you're coming up with new candidates for hops? Are you targeting something specific? Are you purely looking at like the agronomics of it? Like, I want to make something that's going to produce 30 per acre versus 10. Are you like, I want a flavor profile that's going to be for this style of beer? Or what are you targeting?
Take two.
Good job.
So,
Go ahead. Remember the question.
what I got was kind of just like what are they breeding for? What are they looking for? And that's a really complex question. And I'll say that there's pretty much like three different groups of people who decide if a variety gets, and it needs to be accepted and adopted by all three of these groups. So first it needs to be adopted by the farmers. Somebody needs to grow it. Somebody needs to want to grow it. I'll use cashmere as an example, where it's an amazing hop. I really like it. Flavor-wise, but it's hard to grow. Really hard to grow. Doesn't yield very well. And I think I saw in this latest acreage report most farmers ripped it out this year. Just because, yeah. Tough to grow. So farmers need to like it, and what farmers are looking at. Not only are they looking at yield, it needs to produce a lot per acre, just to cover cost, labor, and everything getting more expensive. So yield needs to be there. It needs to be disease resistant. Resistant against pests, molds, mildews, diseases. It also needs to be now everything's getting bred for the new climate. So that means hotter temperatures and less water. Hops they succumb to stress, and stress hurt them in a couple different ways. It can make them less. If you're stressed, if you're worried about survival, you're not gonna put all of your energy into fruit. You're gonna put it into your roots. You're gonna put it into your foliage. You're gonna survive. You're not really gonna worry about procreating this. So if they're stressed, they need to handle that stress. Actually, stress can even cause hop plants to switch genders as well, which is pretty fascinating because it's more of like a. I've heard some people say that there's 7 hop genders, anywhere from male to female. You have hermaphrodite, but then there's a spectrum. So if they get too stressed out, only the female fruits, all the dudes get ripped out and burned. Only the females fruit. If it switches because of stress from female to male, just no good for the farmers. So not only does it need to please the farmers, but and pickability. And there's some that are they get cut on the vines, then they get put in a truck, and then they get picked. They're kind of like stripped off. Can do this thing where they called shattering, and basically they just break apart. It's not a nice, beautiful cone. They just explode, and all the oils go everywhere, and all over the place. So that's having a nice, easily pickable cone is really important for farmers. So once farmers are happy, then you got brewers, and the brewers need to like it too. They like rubbing, smelling. They like the analytical data. They like having it be not really expensive. So then it kind of comes back to yield. Citra doesn't yield very well per acre, so there's less of it per acre. It's more expensive per acre. So price is a little bit higher. So if you have something like 1134, a lot of the alpha varieties that yield crazy high, you can alpha varieties down at like $7 per pound, and that's mostly just because they yield so well. So brewers need to want to pay for it. It needs to be worth it. Brewing value be there. But then you have the third group, which are the beer drink consumers, and they need to like it as well. So that's why Citra is so popular. Everybody loves taste for the most part. I know there's dissenting opinions, but for the most part, it's a real crowd pleaser. It's just really right brewed. It has pretty shelf stable flavor. It doesn't fall off right away. Some varieties, fall off flavor wise. Other varieties don't store that well. Every variety is a little different. Has a different HSI hop storage index. So there's a lot of different check marks that need to get checked before a variety gets and it's not just one group or another that makes the decision. It's all three of these groups and over many years. So it's a pretty that was a long convoluted answer, but that kind of shed some light where it's not easy like ooh, this looks good, it smells good, a bunch of it needs to make a lot of people happy. Yep.
Another question? Go for it. Anybody else?
All right. So that was awesome. Thank you. So some companies are doing fancy things for hops, right? Cryoing them, right? There's also companies that are making hop oils. How do you see that changing your company and the industry as a whole? Primarily for the industry as a whole. Are you guys focusing on making hops more having that shelf life, making them more consistent or repeatable? How do you see that changing in the coming years?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. That's a great question. I guess I'll start by saying as far as concentrated hop pellets, that's kind of the general industry term. Cryo pellets, they are the cleanest brands. They're the most widely known. So we do Lupamax pellets, and that's a concentrated reduced matter, but it's targeting different things than cryo hops. So cryo hops are pretty extreme. You can have pretty wide ranges alphas and oils between different even variety. So cryo's kind of extreme and big. Lupamax targeting consistency and repeatability. So it does have less plant matter. So you only need to use like 70% of what you compared to T90. So there's just less matter to here. There's less plant matter. So you do get improved efficiencies there. But it's really the consistency that Lupamax is amazing at. So it every year. Lot selection is a complex. Brewers come and select hops. Suppliers select hops. Everybody's selecting hops because not every even the same growing the same variety. One lot of the field completely different than the other side. So Citra needs to taste like Citra every year. So all the lots that go through the sensory plus selection process. Lupamax, they go through really rigorous testing, both sensory and analytical. So the same. Each variety is going to be the same. Analytically, oils, and sensory-wise. But then even too, because the selection process is so rigorous with Max, the variation of the crop year is very minimal. So I think the crop year Citra changed 0.5% the alpha oil. So you're going to have very little variability, which is not only for commercial craft brewers, but also your homebrewers, because you don't need to recipe, you don't need to readjust things, you don't need to guess on how this lot of Citra is going to brew up. Brewed with Max once, pretty much know it. So everybody right now is targeting efficiencies. Craft beer in general is being by some really it's a perfect storm of rising costs. So last year was one of the worst barley harvests over 100 years. Alumina is really hard to get right now. So cans are crazy expensive. Even CO2, there is a shortage of medical grade, food grade CO2. So all of rising costs are really impacting craft beer. So everybody is trying to improve their efficiency, and absolutely the easiest way to do it is any of the concentrated pellet or like you mentioned earlier when you asked the question, liquid hop products. So we do offer a couple different ones. Incognito is our cool addition, and Spectrum is our dry hopping addition. And each of those are pretty specifically designed for that application. Just for various reasons. But like Spectrum, you can even dose it completely cold, clear beer, and it'll fully disperse. Or Incognito, if you drop it in a bright beer, and just sink to the bottom. So it needs some of that heat going on. But even Spectrum, it has I forget the term, but it has some specific family biotransformation precursors. So each of them, Spectrum, you could add it early on, high fermentation, or you could end it right at the end and get pretty different results from it. So one of the main topics at CC this year was liquid hop products trying to achieve better efficiency, and the brewers that I was talking there, if they're using multiple of these products, whether it's liquid hop products, concentrated pellets, things like that, they were seeing anywhere from 5 to 10% yield improvement. So if they're brewing 10 barrels, meaning a whole barrel of sell, which is just it can make or break a brewery now. So I'm glad to see you guys out there supporting your local brewery. They need some help right now. But efficiency matters. Yeah.
Thanks, Kaleb.
Thanks. In regards to that hop selection process for doing the cryo gazing, isn't just only taking ones that fall within parameters, kind of like blending like you would whiskey, wine to make a similar product.
Yeah, it's absolutely blending different lots together. But it's lot A plus lot B, together equal the desired result. And they're all of those lots were selected. They go through the classic rub and sniff. They do all this on the actual plant matter pellet. But then the alphas, oils, diols, all of those things are also tested to make sure that fall within the spec and within what's typical for that variety. So there have been varieties which we got 2020, 2021 local mass, and then variety did spec for 22, so we weren't able to carry. So I will say it's pretty rigorous and strict as far as the quality standards and the selection. So yeah.
So does actually making local mix increase the variability rather remaining hops then, because a lot of the hops have to be within specs, basically good hops where would be going towards that.
I would say no. So like selection when brewers come to town, every brewer is looking for something. Some brewers want easily mosaic, some want blueberry, some want like a sulfury shinda. It just every brewer is looking for something a little bit that fits their recipe. So I will say like most of the lots aren't like good or bad. They're just different. So yeah. actually might get snapped up by a lot of brewers. So I'm reminded it was 2019 we were selecting Citra, and by far the absolute favorite everybody was Citra. That was like super bright fire, but that's not necessarily people want from Citra. So we went with a true to type is how we refer to it. So we went with the true to type lot that's Citra for that year. Even though everybody really liked other one, it was just like so out of the norm that even though it was amazing, it wouldn't be exactly what people wanted. So does that kind of shed a little light on that?
Yeah, no, very fascinating.
Yeah, cool.
I don't know if you covered this early, because it came late. So you mentioned Idaho stuff like that. How much does the terroir affect the flavors? You have like consistent different flavors that are added by partners.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So they grow Cascade in Australia, and it's different Cascade grown here. And there's even some varieties. So there's a trademark Sonnet, and Sonnet is actually genetically golden. It's grown in the U.S. So different, and not so different. It has the same like heart, but it's a lot more forward-thinking. It's not quite as earthy and herbally. But yeah, so even though it's the DNA, where it's grown completely impacts and changes the hop. So yeah. I will say there needs to be a lot more research or attention on terroir, but for the most part, it's just like such a complicated, complex topic that it's really tough to hug on the strings and be like, was it terroir this year, or was it climate? Because even Centennial's a really good example here in the valley. The valley's only it's less than 100 miles top to bottom hop fields, and Centennial at the top end is completely different. Centennial at the bottom end of the valley. But different years, maybe the lower valley gets hotter temperatures, more rain, less rain. So it's tough to be like definitely the terroir as opposed to there might have been weather patterns in that microclimate. So yeah.
Hey, Kaleb, anything else you want to cover? I think it's been a great time talking with you. Anything else to wrap up with? That was a good time. Anyone else has questions?
Yeah, if anybody else has any questions, otherwise, I think I'll send over an email to Bill. I'll shoot you a discount code, a coupon. So if anybody wants to try any Mackenzie or 1019 or 1134 or even the loops that we talked about, I'll get you guys a club discount. So you can give it a shot. See what you think. So.
Thanks so much, Kaleb.
Yeah, cool.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much. It's great talking with you. Thank you. Great time.
Yeah. If you have any follow-up, you can always get a hold of me. Just send them on over. I always like talking hops. So let me know. Yeah.
Thanks for 50 West and cheers.
Yeah. Have a good one, guys. Happy brewing, guys.
Thanks, Kaleb.